Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Welcome back to our annual Louisiana Early Ed Month. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Libby Saunier, and I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. I'm honored to welcome all of you to our keynote address this morning. I'm also honored to recognize the title sponsor for Louisiana Early Ed Month 2023, Entergy. This event would not be possible without the generous support we've received from Entergy and all our supportive sponsors and donors. To kick us off, we have a message from Governor John Bell Edwards, a leader who understands that education is the key to economic opportunity and that the pathway to prosperity must begin at the earliest stages of life. Thank you, Governor Edwards, for proclaiming February 2023 as Early Ed Month.
Hello everyone, I'm excited to officially proclaim February as Louisiana Early Ed Month. In Louisiana, we want every young child to have the opportunity to thrive, and we want their parents to be able to work or attend school knowing that their child is learning in a healthy and safe environment. We also want our high quality child care providers to have the support that they need so they can flourish in their chosen profession. That's why last year, with the partnership of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, we secured $84 million for early childhood education programs, a truly historic investment that simply must continue. Our children are among our greatest assets. It will take all of us working together to make sure they have the tools they need to succeed. Thank you, and God bless.
Now we're excited for our keynote address this morning. As you enjoy today's address and the rest of this month's activities, we invite you to share your participation on social media using the hashtag LAEarlyEdMonth. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cade Brumley, the Louisiana State Superintendent of Education, who will kick off today's event and introduce our esteemed keynote.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Saunier, for all that you do for early ed here in our state and even across the country. Thank you for your work supporting child care centers and owners and directors and employees, the kids in those centers. Thank you for your advocacy, and thank you for working with the department as we continue to help in any way we can with this particular month. And the work that is being highlighted over this particular month. So certainly it's exciting that we have a month dedicated to early care in our state. We know that we have so many champions out there supporting this particular work. We know the importance of the work of the early care industry in terms of brain development for our youngest learners, and our agency remains committed to supporting that particular effort. Look, I think it's important to recognize once again the work of the early care industry over the last few years. As I often tell individuals, it is one of the highlights of great work during the pandemic. The way that center directors and owners and workers came together to ensure that kids, our youngest learners, had a place to go during the pandemic so that their parents could go to work, so that the kid could get the services that he or she needed and deserved. And so for that, I just say thank you once again to everyone in this particular space. We will continue to work to improve the environments. We will work to continue to build the infrastructure and move everything closer towards the true cost of care. And I think that everyone would recognize that we have all worked together to do that over the last few years, and we will continue to do those things. So I'm excited to be part of Early Ed Month. And I have the great honor of introducing the keynote speaker for today, Dr. Dana Suskind. And in reviewing her biography, it is quite amazing the things that she has done over her career. She's a pediatric surgeon. She has spent considerable time in clinical work around cochlear implants, as well as looking at ways to prevent early cognitive disparities. She spends her time working at the University of Chicago, where she's the co-director for the Center for Early Learners. I would recommend post this keynote, everyone like me going and learning more about her and the key work that she is doing. And so, Dr. Dana, on behalf of the Louisiana Department of Education and the great state of Louisiana, we welcome you, and we look forward to hearing your remarks today.
Thank you so much for that wonderful, warm introduction. And warm is an important word because I am in Chicago, and I've heard that Louisiana is much warmer at this time, so I wish that we were in person. But I also want to say that I'm actually a Louisiana girl. I went to high school in New Orleans at Ben Franklin, and I came back as an adult and worked at the Children's Hospital of New Orleans. So a lot of my training and development came from your wonderful state. So it feels like home. So I am so thankful to be with you all. I have a few slides to show that we can bring up. And I'm really thankful for all the work of Libby and the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children and the Louisiana Early Childhood Business Roundtable for really hosting such a wonderful event and spending a month really honoring the importance of the early years and the importance of early brain development, the importance of parents and caregivers and childcare providers as the key brain architects. And I'm excited to share a little bit about what I've learned and discovered in my many years of researching early childhood development and as a practicing doctor. First, it's important to know that this is not my natural habitat. Believe it or not, I feel most comfortable in the operating room. That's because my day job is as a pediatric physician and surgeon. I specialize in giving deaf children cochlear implants, helping them access sound, hearing, and spoken language. And some of you may have seen those amazing YouTube videos of children hearing for the first time. Trust me, it is even cooler in person, and it never, ever gets old. I always say as a surgeon that your surgery might end, but that doesn't mean your obligation to your patient ends. That ends when your patient does well, when they go on to live happier, healthier lives. And when your patients are children like mine, the key to happy, healthy life is the brain. In medical school, I fell in love with the brain. It's one of the reasons I became a pediatric cochlear implant surgeon. People think that hearing is about the ears, but it's really all about the brain. And for me, that became extremely clear early in my practice when I started seeing dramatic differences in outcomes of my patients after surgery. Some of my patients excelled developmentally, and others not at all. Some learned to talk, others did not. The ability to hear, it turned out, didn't always unlock their full capacity to learn and thrive intellectually. It was an incredibly painful difference to see. And compelled to understand the reasons for this, and more importantly, what I could do to best help my patients, I began a journey far outside the operating room into the world of social sciences. And for me, I was initially inspired by research that found a stark difference in the amount of language, the actual number of words that children were exposed to early in life. Researchers calculated that by the time a child reached their 4th birthday, there was roughly a difference of 30 million words between those who heard a lot of language and those who heard very little. As I learned more, I realized that what I was seeing amongst my deaf patients really just mirrored the population at large. In all children, the differences in early language exposure correlate with later differences in achievement. Some of my patients were getting that necessary type of exposure, others were not. The research that inspired me wasn't perfect, far, far from it. But I always say it was persuasive enough to pull me from the operating room. It gave me a critical place to start. I think of the 30 million word study now just as a first sentence in what has become an extensive body of literature, a body of literature that includes cutting edge research that reveals all the different ways that language inputs stimulate every part of an infant's brain. Some of you may be familiar with the science of early brain development, but if you'll permit me, I'd like to spend a few minutes reviewing it, because what this science reveals is really incredibly fascinating and at the same time almost impossibly simple. The slides aren't going forward. Thank you. I like to say that the neuroscience tells us that there are many ways to parent a child. There are many, many ways to raise our children, but there's really only one way to build that child's brain, and that's through nurturing interaction and protection from toxic stress. We know this to be true, but there's an alarming disconnect between what we know children's brains need and what we've actually done to meet those needs. In many ways, we squander this incredible gift we are given, a short window of time in which we can set up a child for success in life by nurturing his foundational brain development. Because early in life, infants are essentially helpless. Anybody who's a parent knows this. They rely entirely on others to meet their needs. And the truth is, humans are unique in this way. It's an early sign to show how beautifully we are wired for connection. After all, when you think about it, a horse and a zebra's file stand within minutes of being born and walk within 2 hours. Baby chimpanzees can cling to their mothers as she jumps from tree limb to tree limb. And a newly hatched baby turtle knows how to find its way to the sea within minutes of being born. But not our little human infants. They come into this world a little bit undone. So much so that pediatricians call these first 3 months of life the fourth trimester. Newborns can barely hold up their heads for weeks to months, and walking and eating on their own takes a good year. And the leading explanation for this apparent developmental delay is that nature had to make a compromise. When humans began walking upright on 2 legs, the pelvises of females narrowed. 40 or so weeks of pregnancy produced babies whose head was just at the upper limits of what a woman can pass through her birth canal. But the 40-week-old baby brain still has a whole lot more growing to do. Unlike the above animals whose brains are almost adult size, the baby's brain is only 1/3 the adult size. It's got a lot of growing to do. At the same time, as any woman can attest to, we don't want their heads any larger than it is. And to be clear, that baby's brain, when it comes out, is waiting for instructions to guide its formation. Most of the growth will occur during the first 2 years. In fact, 80 to 85% of the physical brain development growth will occur during this period of time. But for generations, our focus in terms of public attention and money has been on the K-12 schooling. That means that we've skipped over the earlier phase that is critical to laying foundations for learning. Our efforts come too late. Even preschool for all, while incredibly important, is not nearly early enough. And why, you may ask? Because of something called neuroplasticity, the brain's incredible ability to learn and reorganize itself by forming new neural connections is at its peak during birth to 3. Brain circuits, in truth, are sort of a use it or lose it proposition. While our brains remain plastic throughout our lives, and I never want to say it's ever too late, they will never be more so than in the magical, essential early years. The development that occurs during this time is breathtaking. 1 million new neural connections happen every second. And the fact that we are born into this world with a relatively underdeveloped brain and experience this protracted period of foundational brain development is a gift. It is the fact that we begin life essentially helpless is incredibly at the heart of why humans are the most brilliant and creative and connected of all species. But we squander that gift when we don't treat every child's brain with the reverence and care it deserves. When we allow some brains to go unfed, the potential to go untapped. And so you may ask, what is the way that we can help build every child's brain? Neuroscience has revealed to capitalize on this formative time, what a baby needs is rich, nurturing interaction. It's often called serve and return. It's that back and forth that happens when a mom meets her babies babbling with gentle affirmations, or when a dad patiently answers a toddler why for the 100th time in the day. This nurturing interaction is powerful enough to help children move forward and develop 2 critical sets of skills that will allow them to succeed in school and life. It delivers cognitive skills, the kind that are found on intelligence and aptitude tests, reading and writing, and numeracy. It builds non-cognitive or soft skills like grit and resilience. In other words, nurturing interaction builds the entire brain. Or as I like to say, like milk nourishes the growing body, talk and interaction feed the growing brain. And ever since I've noticed these troubling disparities in my patients, I've been motivated by the remarkable growth and opportunity and risk inherent in the early years. In 2010, when I launched the 30 Million Words Initiative, now the TMW Center for Early Learning and Public Health, my primary goal was to help ensure the healthy development of all children and to give every child the ability to reach his or her potential intellectually and emotionally. Brain science pointed the way. Everything that we designed and did was based on the fact that nurturing talk and interaction between caregiver and infants lay the foundation for brain development. It is and always has been about the power of parents and caregivers. My team and I developed evidence-based programs and strategies to show parents the impact of talking to babies and young children. Those strategies became the theme of TMW: tune in, talk more, and take turns, or what we affectionately call the 3 T's. We demonstrated to parents that rich conversation is what is needed to unlock a child's potential, and that parents as well as other loving caregivers hold the key in the early years. All adults, no matter their level of education, wealth, or work, can master the simple, essential techniques for optimally building a child's brain. The idea, a straightforward approach to a very complex problem, was intuitively appealing and a great success. I think that many hoped that it would be a silver bullet. But of course, there are no silver bullets. But I was proud to share the 3 T's with many families through the center and through my first book, 30 Million Words, Building a Child's Brain. Look, my colleagues and I at the center studies of our programs. We found that indeed the strategies worked and the science that supports them is solid. The programs we promote can and often do improve the lives of children. But as our research programs took us into more and more families' homes and into their lives, I realized just how much was being asked of them. Because our studies followed children from their first day of life into kindergarten, my team and I were getting to know many families up close and over time. The parents' enthusiasm was thrilling. Look, they embraced the 3 T's with gusto, tuning into their children, talking more as they went about their daily lives, taking turns, encouraging their children to have conversations from day one. They wanted what every parent wants, to help their children get off to the best possible start. The problem was the 3 T's only took parents so far. Real life would intrude again and again and again. There was Randy, who loved the fact that his love of baseball could help his son learn math, but had to work over 2 jobs and most days had less than 30 minutes with his kids. There was Sonia, who gave up a well-paying job to care for her husband when he got sick, and whose family ended up spending over 2 years in a homeless shelter, where she raised her 2 children, the youngest still a baby, in a stressful and chaotic environment. There was Michael and Kiana, whose life was upended when he was arrested for a crime he didn't commit and sat in jail for 5 years, awaiting a trial that quickly exonerated him. Everywhere I looked, I saw hurdles looming in front of mothers and fathers. I realized with both sadness and resolve that our programs can share with parents the knowledge and powerful skills to build their children's brains, but our programs do not substantially change the day-to-day lives of the parents who participated. The larger reality of a family circumstance, the work constraints, economic stressors, bad luck, or injustices they're subject to, all matter as much as those 3 T's for healthy brain development. They either allow for the brain-building power of talk to occur, or if they limit the opportunities for engaging in the 3 T's, they stifle it like weeds choking off a garden. Once again, I was struck by the alarming disconnect between what we know children's brains need and what we have actually done to meet those needs, or more accurately, what we've done to allow and help parents meet those needs. at the very moment when parents and children could use the most support, and when that support would have an outsized influence by strengthening the neural connections, our society largely leaves them on their own. This reality, of course, became painfully apparent as COVID-19 left families reeling, millions forced to scrape by with no backup whatsoever. Parents were left on their own, anxious and exhausted. They were called on to manage every part of their children's lives. The pandemic was like a powerful earthquake with lingering aftershocks that showed us just how shaky our nation's infrastructure of supports for parents and therefore children really was and still is. The bottom line is we've made it difficult for parents to raise children in the way that they know is right for their children, in the way that allows them to optimize their healthy brain development. This realization motivated me to write my last book. I knew that the world didn't need another how-to book about what parents could do, though my publisher would have loved it. That was in 30 million words. Instead, I thought a book that shows how brain science can inform a society that works for parents, not against them, that could help shift the narrative and make it a case for society that places families at the center. I named this book Parent Nation, but I should be clear that this refers to supporting all loving caregivers. And as I was writing this book, I spoke to dozens of parents from all walks of life, and I was struck time and time again by how much they shared in common. Even parents who looked like they had nothing in common on the surface told me stories and shared thoughts and concerns and fears that were incredibly similar. Though their circumstances differed wildly, the fact that they were struggling to parent in the way they wanted, in the way that they knew best, that was universal. I listened to one mom, Jade, who is deeply religious, who is an evangelical Christian, and who believes the mother's place is in the home, as she explained through tears that the lack of health insurance and inadequate family income sent her back to work at Starbucks after her kids were born, in spite of her dreams of being a stay-at-home mom. I got to know Talia, who had 2 babies while earning a PhD in psychology, but who had to give up a promising postdoctoral position at the University of Chicago when it became untenable to manage the demands of the job and her 2 children under 4. The economics of paying for childcare no longer seemed to make sense, and Talia felt like she was, quote, failing in all parts of her life. Unlike Jade, she hoped to work outside the home but could not. Look, we talk a lot about parental choice in this country. It is considered sacrosanct, as it should be. But what does choice mean when there are no options to be had? Jade didn't feel like she had a choice, Talia didn't feel like she had a choice, and neither do millions of parents around the country. And I suspect many of you hear stories from families in your state, and maybe you're even dealing with this. Families who just want to give their children the strongest possible start. Families who are playing by the rules, who are willing to sacrifice anything for their children, and yet in many cases are still struggling. The tragic consequences of this means that their children are not being given every chance to reach their full potential, to maximize the gift of foundational brain development that occurs early in life. Too often, we fail to see the connection between a parent's circumstance and the struggles and the impact on their young children and their developing brain. But I am here to tell you that the potential of children, as you know, depends on the support for their parents and caregivers. So what does that mean? It means that we can apply what we know about foundational brain development to inform a new way of approaching early childhood policy and practice. Look, we clearly know what children need. They need enrichment in the form of nurturing talk and interaction. And parents need enrichment in the form of education about child development and supports and tools to put that knowledge into use. What else do children need? Children need time. They need time with parents and caregivers. And parents need that same thing as well. They need time to be able to spend with their children to build their child's brain. And they need protection from toxic stress. Children need that as well, as do parents. And of course, Another crucial form of enrichment and support for parents is high-quality childcare, something that is out of reach for many who need it. Approximately half of Americans live in so-called childcare deserts. Only 10% of existing programs are designed with developmental science in mind. And yet, a great majority of our parents have to work or want to work. Almost 13 million Americans in their prime working years have children under 6, while 70% of mothers are in the workforce. That means that many parents don't have adequately nurturing childcare for their children during the formative years. And this is an area that we need to invest in significantly, both in terms of ensuring high quality childcare opportunities and that childcare providers, who are brain builders of our next generation, are supported and paid for in a commensurate way. And the truth is that when we think about all of these supports that families need, it is very clear that they need not just enrichment in time, but they need protection from toxic stress. They need a living wage and the ability to have protection from the unpredictabilities of our current state of the economy. With the neuroscience of early childhood as a guide and the map for society clearly marked, of course, it's critical to emphasize that parents must remain the captains of their ship, manning the helm. People like to say that it takes a village to raise a child, but I think a more appropriate statement is that it takes a parent to raise a child and a community and a society to support that parent. We all play a role in building that crew, ensuring that parents have the support they need from public institutions, from employers, from local communities. We've discussed the scientific case for doing so, the moral imperative is clear, and the economic reasons are just as strong. Because the reality is, as parents struggle to hold everything together, parents are paying a price as well. Every year, $13 billion due to the childcare issues faced by their workforce. There are so many reasons that women have had to step back from the workforce. The lack of childcare is a significant one Of course, plenty of parents, mothers and fathers alike, choose to stay home with their children because that's what they want to do, because that's what's best for their family. That choice should be respected and celebrated as well. But it should be just that, a choice. And it's finally time that we create a society that facilitates such choice, that allows parents to be parents in the way they want to, in the way that allows them to be the best brain architects and guardians of our future generation that they can be. And it can be, I truly believe, a value that unites us is in this moment in time. It can be a common cause around which we gather and heal. Parents are a beautifully diverse group, bringing our own lenses and lived experiences to the sacred task of raising children. But we are also a collective, bound by our fierce love for the humans we're raising and boundless hope for their future. Because we can never forget the importance of supporting the parents and the guardians of our children's future. Because the potential, as I say, of children relies on the support for their parents. I believe that a parent nation is what we need. The science demands as much. Our children demand as much. Because that is how we grant our children the promise of their promise. And for that reason, I am so incredibly thankful to be here and to have spoken to you all, because I know Louisiana cares deeply about its children and families, and the fact that you have a whole month dedicated to early childhood says that. So I want to thank you all for having me and open it up for a Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suskind, for joining us today in your home state. Virtually. It was exciting to find out you were from Louisiana. We have a couple of questions that I've seen come through, and one in particular was really about how do we protect children and their parents from the elements of toxic stress? What are some things that, caregivers, childcare teachers, and parents can do to help protect against toxic stress?
Yeah, that's a really great, oops. Can you see me? That's a really great question. And, there are a number of different ways. From a societally, can you see me okay? From a societal standpoint, it's really about, much of the stress that I've seen comes from the fact that the uncertainty of the economic economy for parents. The advent, back 50 years ago, one parent, one often father, could work at a plant for, his entire life, raise a family, support a family, have, the policies necessary to deal with the uncertainties of life. Really, the economic stressors have completely changed, and much of the uncertainty and burden has fallen on the individual parent and parents. The lack of, paid family and medical leave is a huge issue. The lack of a living wage is a huge issue. And so thinking of it from a policy lens, that's how I would think about it. From the individual lens, I think that we can support parents individually by acknowledging the fact that we've convinced families that so much rests on their shoulders, and by sort of relieving that stress by saying, look, we are here to support you, understanding the huge impacts of uncertainty on parents' mental health, especially mothers' mental health during this period of time, is really critical. So I think there are policy answers that are critically important, and there are individual level answers of really saying, this idea of American individualism has led parents, and especially mothers, to think that, that it's all on them and that there's no support out there for them. And that should be just the opposite. We need to be supporting parents even more.
Absolutely. And what we know from longitudinal research is anytime we have an economic upheaval, like we've had with the pandemic, or I would say with hurricanes here in Louisiana, that children's development tends to lag because of the toxic stress that they experience, just because you're trying to survive. And if anybody knows about resiliency, it would be the state of Louisiana. I mean, our little people know about it too, as we've faced many storms and then pandemic and floods and those types of things. So absolutely.
Yeah.
The other piece I want
Libby, can I just to continue on that, when it's very interesting when you look at the research that came out of, New York about the impact of COVID on babies born during this period of time. As we know, the pandemic had a significant impact on the developmental trajectories of babies born during this time. And when the researchers looked to see, was it the mothers, they had COVID? Was it the actual infection? It wasn't. It was actually the mental health issues and the stress that parents, especially mothers, were dealing with, and we know that the stress of the mother, has a huge impact on the development of the child. It really makes clear why, we need to, if we really care about children's development, we need to be supporting parents and caregivers, and child care providers are very much part of that equation too.
Absolutely. And I think, any of us that have worked in the field with young children at any point, we've never met a family that didn't want the absolute best for their child.
Yeah.
There just might be too much going on to do all the things that need to be done. So to your point, we need to support them. Absolutely. The other question that I saw that just came in was from your research and your viewpoint, you were talking about high quality early childhood, early care and education. What do you think the key factors are when we're talking about high quality early care and education in our country?
That's an excellent question. I think there a lot of discussions right now are centering around how, what does quality look like? How do you measure it? And I think what's quite clear is that at the end of the day, it's about that nurturing, especially in the early years, that nurturing interaction between teacher and child. And there's, so, if I was to choose one thing, having, high quality interaction or a fancy building, I would go for the high quality interaction every day of the week, because that's what's building the child's brain. And what's really important to know is that, we compare different child care centers or pre-K centers, but there's been research to show that even in a classroom, there's huge, what we call heterogeneity, variance in what children are receiving. And really the key is figuring out a way to ensure that all babies and children and pre-K, pre-K students are getting that nurturing interaction. So that's some of the work that we're doing right now. So.
And I would say here in Louisiana, as we have, in the top 10 accountability systems related to early care and education in the country, is that the heart of our accountability system is the teacher-child interaction. So for all of our providers and our owners of child care centers and our parents, know that when your child is in a type 3 child care center in the state of Louisiana, that's a part of the accountability system. Yeah. The heart of the work is that teacher-child interaction. And that's really where the magic happens when they're young.
It is, and the thing is that we get, not that we get confused, but it's so easy to be measuring things that are totally distal. Look, at the end of the day, that is what's building children's brains. And I love that that's what you all are doing, and I'd love to learn more.
Well, we often we say that our early childhood teachers, we don't call them workers because they are teachers, are really the architects of the brain, with mamas and daddies and caregivers. And so I really appreciate how our state has galvanized around that and has helped increase the quality for young children in our state, and is now looking at how do we really support families to do that.
No, it's so true. Look, I'm a surgeon, right? I operate right next to the brain. And it drives me crazy that people don't look at early child care providers and pre-K teachers as not just educators, they're brain builders, right? I mean, why is a neurosurgeon or somebody who, look, and I'm a surgeon, so I can say this. I think early child care teachers, from birth to 5 should be way up there on, not only individuals that we honor, but that we support in all the ways they should be, and parents too. So
compensation would be important. Absolutely.
And that's a surgeon speaking.
That's right. I love that. And it's one of the things that we'll make sure as we highlight today's events with our child care providers across the states is that they hear that from you, Dr. Suskind, because they oftentimes feel defeated and not valued. But, a mama putting their most precious gift in your hands is not to be unsung.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you today, Dr. Suskind, and also to Dr. Brumley, who was out and about in the state and paused to be with us to help kick off Early Ed Month. And thank you to everyone who took the time out of their busy schedules to join us for today's program and subsequent discussion. We are looking forward to a month full of programming in recognition of Early Ed Month. Throughout the month, we are co-hosting regional events for elected officials and business leaders with United Ways across Louisiana. We will also have a press conference on Tuesday, February 14th, where we invite you to join us at the Policy Institute and parents as we discuss our annual parent poll survey findings that really discuss and focus on the child care arrangements of Louisiana families, including their needs and experiences related to child care. Then on Thursday, February 16th, we invite you to participate as we celebrate Social Media Day of Action. We'll be sharing a social media toolkit with you all following today's event, so you can learn how to join in on that day. On Thursday, February 23rd at 12 p.m. Central, we'll invite all parents and guardians or anyone who wants to learn how much to advocate for Louisiana's youngest learners to join us for the Louisiana Early Education Month Parent Advocacy Lunch and Learn. I'd like to thank our additional early ed sponsors. Your endless support allows us to continue to advance policies to ensure that Louisiana's youngest children are ready not only for success in school, but ultimately life. For details on how to tune into this month's programming and to learn more about early care and education in Louisiana, please follow us on social media at Policy Institute LA or visit our website at policyinstitutela.org. Again, thank you for joining us. We know that if we want to go fast, we go alone. But if we want to go far for our children in Louisiana, we must go far together. Thank you so much for having us today and for joining us.